It's quiet, isn't it? No notification, no name lighting up your screen, no hey that used to come at the exact moment you started missing her. And here's the part that's messing with your head. If she's not reaching out, why does it still feel like she's there? Like something unfinished is still pulling at both of you. You're trying to act like it doesn't matter. You tell yourself, if she wanted to, she would. That's what everyone says. Clean, simple, logical. But emotions aren't built on logic, especially hers. Because here's the truth no one really explains to you. Silence from a woman doesn't always mean absence. Sometimes it means conflict. Sometimes it means she's thinking more than she's speaking. And that's where you start to lose control. You check your phone more than you should. You replay conversations in your head, trying to figure out where it shifted. You wonder if she's talking to someone else, if you've already been replaced, if everything you felt was just one-sided. But deep down, something doesn't feel finished. Something feels paused. And that's not an accident. Women don't disconnect the same way men do. When a man pulls away, he often distracts himself, replaces the feeling, moves forward. But when a woman steps back, she goes inward, she processes, she rewinds, she questions herself just as much as she questions you. But here's the twist that most men never understand. Just because she's thinking about you doesn't mean she's going to reach out. That silence you're experiencing, it's not emptiness, it's restraint. She's holding back. Not because she forgot you, but because something inside her is telling her she shouldn't move forward yet. Maybe it's pride. Maybe it's fear. Maybe it's the memory of something you said or didn't say. But whatever it is, it's powerful enough to keep her quiet. And your mistake is thinking silence equals indifference. It doesn't. In fact, some of the strongest emotional attachments exist in silence. No texts, no calls, just thoughts that keep looping in her mind when she's alone. Moments that replay when she didn't ask them to. A feeling she hasn't fully resolved. But here's where you need to be careful. Just because she's thinking about you doesn't mean you should chase her. That's the trap. Because the moment you start chasing silence, you destroy the very tension that's keeping you alive in her mind. You think reaching out will bring clarity. You think one message will fix the distance. But what you don't realize is she's already aware of your presence without you saying a word. And when you break that silence too soon, you shift the power. Now she doesn't have to wonder anymore. Now she doesn't have to feel your absence. Now you've given her certainty, and certainty kills curiosity. Right now, you exist in a space that most men are too impatient to hold. Uncertainty, mystery, unfinished emotion. And that's exactly where she's still connected to you. You're not gone from her mind. You're just not accessible. And that difference is everything. You think she forgot you because she's quiet. But what if the silence isn't distance? What if it's discipline? There's a version of her that wants to reach out. A version that picks up her phone, types your name, pauses, and then deletes it. Not once. Not twice. More times than she'd ever admit. And every time she stops herself, it's not because she doesn't feel something. It's because she feels too much and doesn't trust where it leads. You see, women don't just act on emotion. They filter it. They test it. They sit with it longer than you think. And when something about you lingers in her mind, it doesn't just disappear because she decided to stay silent. It grows roots in the background. But here's the part that's uncomfortable to accept. She's also testing you, not in a manipulative way, not in some game you need to win. She's watching what happens when she removes her presence. She's observing whether your energy collapses without her attention, whether you become reactive, whether you lose your center. Because the truth is, attraction isn't just about connection, it's about stability under pressure. And silence creates pressure. Most men fail here. They feel the void and rush to fill it. They double text, they over-explain, they try to recreate what used to be instead of allowing something deeper to build. And in doing that, they unknowingly answer a question she never asked out loud. Does he need me more than he values himself? The moment the answer becomes yes, something inside her shifts. But when you don't chase, when you don't panic, when you continue moving forward with your life as if her silence didn't shake your foundation, something else happens. Now she starts to question. Why hasn't he reached out? Did he lose interest? Is he talking to someone else? And just like that, the roles reverse. Now she's the one checking her phone. Now she's the one replaying your last conversation. Now she's the one sitting with uncertainty. And uncertainty, when combined with emotional connection, creates something powerful: obsession. But don't misunderstand this. This isn't about manipulating her mind. This is about understanding human nature at a deeper level. When someone feels your presence but can't predict your actions, they think about you more, not less. Predictability is comfortable, but it's forgettable. Uncertainty is uncomfortable, but it's unforgettable. Right now, you're sitting in that space whether you realize it or not. She knows you're there, she knows you exist, but she doesn't know what you're doing, what you're thinking, or whether you're still available to her in the same way. And that lack of clarity pulls her back mentally. But here's where most men sabotage themselves. They mistake silence for rejection. Instead of seeing it as a phase of emotional processing, they react emotionally instead of responding strategically. They try to force movement when the real power is in stillness. You don't need to prove your value by chasing her attention. You prove it by maintaining your composure when her attention is absent, because the man who can remain grounded in silence becomes the man she can't stop thinking about. Not because he begged for her attention, but because he didn't need it to feel whole. What you're feeling right now, that urge to reach out, to break the silence, to just check in, it's not random. It's withdrawal, not from her, but from the emotional pattern the two of you created together. You got used to her presence, the rhythm of her replies, the way she would respond at certain times, in certain tones, with certain energy. And now that rhythm is gone, your mind is trying to restore it. It's searching for closure, for certainty, for something stable to hold on to. But here's the truth most men never face. You're not just missing her, you're missing how she made you feel about yourself. That validation, that sense of being chosen, of being seen, of being wanted without having to ask for it. And when that disappears, it creates a kind of emotional vacuum, a quiet discomfort that pushes you to act. Not because it's right, but because it relieves the tension. And that's exactly why reaching out right now feels so tempting. Because it's not about connection, it's about relief. But relief is short-term. And short-term decisions often create long-term consequences. Because if you reach out from a place of emotional need, she feels it. Not through your words, but through your energy. Women are highly attuned to emotional shifts. They can sense when something is off, when a message carries weight behind it, when it's not just a simple hey, but a disguised attempt to regain control, attention, or reassurance. And the moment she feels that, she pulls back even more, not because she doesn't care, but because something inside her tells her that the dynamic has shifted, that the balance is off, that you're no longer grounded in yourself, but in her response. And once that happens, attraction doesn't just pause, it declines. But when you resist that urge, when you sit with the discomfort instead of trying to escape it, something different happens. You start to reclaim control, not over her, but over yourself. And that's where real power begins. Because now your actions are no longer driven by fear of losing her, but by respect for your own emotional stability. And here's the paradox. The less you act out of fear, the more she feels your absence. The less you chase, the more space you create for her thoughts to come back to you. The less you try to control the outcome, the more unpredictable you become. And unpredictability keeps you alive in her mind. Right now, she doesn't need another message from you. She already knows what you sound like. What she doesn't know is what you're doing without her. She doesn't know if you've moved on emotionally. She doesn't know if you've grown stronger in the silence. She doesn't know if she still has the same place in your life. And those unknowns, they create tension, and tension creates thought. So while you're sitting there thinking about reaching out, understand this. Every moment you don't, you're allowing her to feel something she can't control: curiosity, doubt, intrigue, and maybe even a little fear of losing you. Not because you said anything, but because you didn't. There's something most men misunderstand about silence. They think it's empty. But silence is never empty when emotional history exists. It's active, it moves, it lingers. It speaks in a language you can't see but definitely feel. Right now, while you're overthinking her absence, she might be doing something that feels completely unrelated to you. Working, laughing, scrolling, living her life. But underneath all of that, there's often a second layer most men never consider. Memory. And memory doesn't require effort. It just appears. A random moment. A familiar tone. A place you once talked about. A song she didn't even like, but now can't hear without thinking of you. That's how emotional imprint works. But here's the part that changes everything. Just because she remembers you doesn't mean she will act on it. Women can feel deeply and still choose distance, not because the feeling is gone, but because something in their internal world hasn't aligned yet. Timing, pride, emotional clarity, self-protection. There are layers to her silence that you will never fully see. And that's where most men misinterpret everything. They assume absence means replacement. They assume silence means disinterest. They assume delay means rejection. But real emotional dynamics don't move in straight lines. Sometimes she's quiet because she's overwhelmed by what she feels. Sometimes she's distant because she's trying to regain control over herself, not over you. And sometimes she's waiting to see what you become without her. That last one is the one that hits hardest, because it removes control from both sides. Now, it's not about what she feels in the moment. It's about what she observes over time. Does he collapse without attention? Does he try to force connection? Does he disappear into frustration? Or does he continue forward like his life doesn't revolve around a single response? And that observation shapes her perception more than any conversation ever could. Because attraction isn't only built in interaction, it's also built in distance, but only when the distance is handled correctly. If you react emotionally to silence, you signal dependency. If you fill the gap too quickly, you erase curiosity. If you rush to restore what was lost, you reveal that you were never really standing on your own emotional foundation. But when you don't, when you stay grounded, when you continue living without trying to force her back into your world, something subtle begins to happen in her mind. She starts to reassess. Not because you told her to, but because your absence now has structure. It's not chaotic, it's not desperate, it's not chasing, it's calm. And calm distance is powerful because it creates a question she can't easily answer. Why am I still thinking about him when he's not even trying anymore? That question doesn't come from logic. It comes from emotional residue, and emotional residue doesn't disappear just because time passes. It stays until something replaces it or reactivates it. And right now, you are neither reacting nor being replaced in her mind with certainty. You are simply unresolved. The hardest part for you isn't her silence. It's what your mind does with it. Because silence gives space, and your thoughts rush in to fill every empty corner with worst-case scenarios. You start building stories you don't actually have proof for. She moved on. She doesn't care. There's someone else. And the more you think it, the more real it feels. But feelings are not facts. They're interpretations. And when emotional attachment is involved, those interpretations get distorted. Here's what's really happening underneath all of that mental noise. Your brain is trying to regain control over uncertainty, because uncertainty feels like danger to the nervous system. So it creates explanations, even painful ones, just to make things feel predictable again. But the truth is often much simpler than your anxiety wants to believe. She hasn't reached out, but that doesn't automatically mean she's gone. It means she's in a state of emotional evaluation. And evaluation is slow. It's not loud, it's not dramatic. It happens in pauses, in private thoughts, in moments you will never see. And while you're focused on what she's doing, the more important question is what you're doing to yourself in this silence. Because there are two paths men take here. One path is emotional reaction. They start over texting, checking socials, looking for signs, trying to decode everything, and in doing so, they slowly give away their emotional center. The other path is emotional regulation. They observe the silence without letting it define their identity. They feel the discomfort, but they don't let it control their decisions. They continue building their life, even when nothing external is confirming them. And here's the reality. Only one of those paths keeps you attractive in the long run, because attraction is not just about presence, it's about emotional stability under uncertainty. Now, there's something deeper going on in her mind, too, something most men don't realize. When a woman pulls back, she's not always trying to replace you. Sometimes she's trying to understand what you represented in her emotional world. Was it excitement? Was it comfort? Was it validation? Was it confusion? And more importantly, what would your absence actually feel like if it became permanent? That question doesn't get answered through texts. It gets answered through time and distance, but only if you don't interrupt it. Because every time you step in too early, you collapse the emotional space where realization forms. You replace reflection with interaction, and interaction resets the process. That's why patience is not passive here. It's strategic restraint, but not the kind of strategy that's about controlling her. It's about controlling your emotional response to uncertainty. Because the man who can sit in emotional ambiguity without losing himself is the man who never fully leaves her mind. Not because he's trying to stay there, but because he doesn't fall apart when he's not actively being chosen in real time. And that creates something very rare in modern dating dynamics. Emotional presence without physical access. And that combination is what keeps curiosity alive long after communication fades. There's a moment most men don't recognize until it's already passed. It's the moment when chasing stops working, not because she's gone, but because the dynamic has already changed. If you've been feeling like nothing you do gets the same response it used to, it's not random. It's not bad luck. It's not timing. It's perception shifting. And perception shifts quietly. She doesn't announce it. She doesn't explain it. She just starts responding differently, or not at all. But what you need to understand is this. Even in that shift, you still exist in her internal awareness, just not in the same emotional category you once were. And this is where most men panic. They try to fix it with more attention, more effort, more explanation, more presence. But attraction doesn't recover through pressure. It recovers through recalibration. And recalibration only happens when emotional space is respected. Right now, whether she's reaching out or not, her mind is not empty of you. What changes is how often she visits that thought, and what emotion is attached to it when she does. And that part is shaped heavily by what you do in your absence. If your absence is filled with desperation, she associates you with pressure. If your absence is filled with emotional noise, she associates you with instability. But if your absence is filled with silence, growth, and self-direction, she associates you with mystery. And mystery is not about playing games. It's about not overexposing yourself emotionally when there's no mutual exchange happening, because overexposure kills imagination. And imagination is where attraction survives long-distance emotional gaps. So what do you do now? You don't try to force clarity from someone who hasn't chosen to give it. You don't chase reassurance from silence. You don't abandon your emotional center just to feel connected again. You return to yourself. Not in a dramatic way, in a steady way, in a way that doesn't announce itself but changes everything internally, because the truth is, if she is still thinking about you, it will not be because you convinced her. It will be because your absence had weight. And if she is not thinking about you anymore, no amount of chasing would have saved it anyway. That's the part most men don't want to accept. But acceptance is where control begins. Now here's the final question I want you to sit with honestly. If she never reaches out again, would your life still feel meaningful, structured, and whole without her response? And if the answer makes you uncomfortable, then don't chase her. Fix that part first. Because the goal was never to become a man who is waiting to be chosen. The goal is to become a man whose silence also has meaning, whose presence is felt even when he's not speaking, whose absence creates reflection, not relief. And now I want you to comment something real, not performative. What hurts more for you right now? Her silence, or the thought that she might still be thinking about you, but choosing not to act? Be honest. And if this message hit something real in you, like the video, subscribe, and share it with one friend who needs to hear this before he loses himself in silence that was never meant to be chased.